Hey guys, tonight we explore the life of Captain Kidd, the pirate hunter, who switched careers midway. One became a pirate. William Kidd's story, to some, is the ultimate betrayal. A respected merchant captain hired by English noblemen to hunt pirates, then sacrificed when his legally sanctioned violence became politically inconvenient. This is a tale about the razor-thin line between hero and villain, where the only difference was who decided to throw you under the ship first. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're respectable. That's the word people use when they talk about you in New York's bustling port taverns. And in 1689, respectability is currency. You're William Kidd, merchant captain, and you've built something rare in this colonial frontier. A reputation that opens doors. You own property on Pearl Street. You have a wife, Sarah, who came with her own inheritance and gave you legitimacy in New York society. You have children whose names will appear in church records, the kind of permanence that matters when you're trying to prove you're more than just another sailor who got lucky. Your ships carry legitimate cargo, furs, timber, tobacco, and when you dock, merchants greet you by name because you've never cheated them, never disappeared with their goods, never played the games that sink lesser men. This matters more than you realize. The city smells like salt spray and horse shit, like any port where old world ambitions slam against new world chaos. England and France are at war again. King William's War, they're calling it, though most colonists just call it the latest excuse for maritime violence. French privateers are harassing English merchant vessels up and down the coast, and every captain who returns to port tells stories of near misses, of French letters of marque that make piracy legal as long as you're stealing from the right flag. You've avoided the privateering game so far. You're a merchant, not a killer, and there's good money in honest trade if you're competent and careful. But the war is making honest trade harder, and men are starting to whisper about opportunities, about legal ways to take French ships and call it patriotic duty, about how privateering commissions turn theft into heroism as long as you have the right paperwork. You attend church, you pay your taxes. When the governor throws dinners for men of influence, you're invited because you're the kind of colonial success story that makes the whole empire project look viable. You're proof that a Scottish-born sailor can become a gentleman if he works hard enough and doesn't ask too many questions about who owned this land before the English showed up. Your neighbors respect you. Your crew trusts you. Your wife believes in you. You've spent years building this life, brick by brick, voyage by voyage, and it feels solid. It feels earned. You don't realize yet that respectability is just another word for useful, and useful men get used up. The colonial hierarchy is a performance where everyone pretends they're not desperately clinging to relevance. The governor pretends he has authority beyond what the next ship from London grants him. The merchants pretend their fortunes are secure when a single storm could bankrupt them. The landowners pretend their property deeds mean something when they're written on stolen ground. And you pretend that being invited to their tables makes you one of them, when really you're just the competent help they trust to do the dangerous work. But the illusion holds because everyone needs it to hold. Without the performance of order, the whole colonial project collapses into the chaos it actually is. Europeans murdering each other and the indigenous populations for the right to exploit a continent none of them have any legitimate claim to. You don't think about politics much. You think about cargo manifests and tide tables and which ships need their hulls scraped. You think about your children's future, about buying more property, about the comfortable middle age you're building toward where you can hire younger captains to do the sailing while you collect the profits. It's a good dream. It's a reasonable dream. It's the kind of dream that makes men work themselves to exhaustion, believing that competence and reliability will be rewarded with security. And for a while, it works. For a while, you're exactly what you appear to be, a respectable merchant captain in a colony that desperately needs respectable men to make the whole enterprise look legitimate. Then the letter arrives. It's sealed with a nobleman's crest, carried by a messenger who waited specifically for you at the dock. The wax is still perfect, pressed with an insignia you recognize from portraits. Lord Bellomont, the newly appointed governor of New York, Massachusetts, and New Hampshire, a man whose power reaches across the Atlantic to the very court of King William himself. The messenger tells you Lord Bellomont has a proposition, an opportunity, something that requires a man of your particular reputation and skill. You hold the letter in your hands, feel the weight of expensive paper and imported ink, and you tell yourself, this is recognition. This is your competence being rewarded. This is the moment when your years of honest work finally open the door to real wealth, real legitimacy, the kind of opportunity that separates men who die as ship captains from men who die as gentlemen. You break the seal, unfold the letter, and read words about service to the crown, about hunting pirates in the Indian Ocean, about investors who include lords and earls, and even the king himself. You read about shares of prize money, about legal commissions, about how this isn't piracy but patriotic duty. You read it twice, 3 times, and each time it sounds better, sounds like everything you've been building toward. Sarah watches you read, sees something change in your expression, and asks what the letter says. You tell her it's an opportunity. You tell her Lord Bellomont himself has chosen you for a royal commission. You tell her this could set up your children for life, could buy the kind of security that no amount of merchant voyages could ever guarantee. You don't tell her what you're already sensing, the tiny alarm bell ringing somewhere in the back of your mind that wonders why noblemen need a colonial merchant captain for something this important. But you silence that alarm because the letter is right there in your hands. Physical proof that you've made it, that your respectability has been noticed by people who matter. You write back accepting the proposition before you've even heard the full details, because men like you don't refuse invitations from men like Lord Bellomont. That's not how the game works. That's not how sailors become gentlemen. And as you seal your response and hand it back to the messenger, you feel something you haven't felt in years, the electric thrill of possibility, the sense that your life is about to change forever. You're right about that last part. You're absolutely right, but you've completely misunderstood the direction of the change. Your fate is already written. The trap is already set. You just haven't felt the jaws close yet. It's 1695, and you're in London watching noblemen turn piracy into paperwork. This is how empires work. They take violence, wrap it in legal language, stamp it with royal seals, and suddenly theft becomes duty, and murder becomes service. You're sitting in a room with Lord Bellomont, and he's explaining the proposition like he's doing you a favor. Hunt pirates in the Indian Ocean. Protect English trade routes, seize enemy vessels, keep 10% of whatever you capture. It sounds legitimate. It sounds like exactly the kind of opportunity that transforms merchant captains into men of consequence. What Bellomont doesn't emphasize is that you're personally liable for all costs if you fail. The investors risk money. You risk everything. The investors are men whose names appear in history books. Lord Bellomont himself, newly appointed governor of multiple colonies. The Earl of Orford, First Lord of the Admiralty. The Duke of Shrewsbury, one of England's most powerful politicians. And at the very top, holding shares through proxies, because kings aren't supposed to profit from privateering, is King William III himself. These men are investing money they'll never miss. For them, worst case is a failed business speculation. For you, worst case is debt, disgrace, and ruin. But they're framing this as partnership, as though a colonial merchant captain and the King of England are equals. And you want to believe it so badly that you ignore the screaming asymmetry of risk. The ship is called the Adventure Galley, and she's beautiful in the predatory way warships are beautiful. 34 guns, built for speed and violence, capable of using oars when the wind fails. She cost $8,000 to build, money you'll owe if this fails. But right now you're too dazzled by commanding a weapon this powerful. You supervise her construction at Deptford, watching shipwrights install gun ports and reinforce her hull. This isn't a merchant vessel, this is power, and noblemen chose you to wield it. That trust feels intoxicating. The letter of marque arrives in December 1695, and you hold it like a religious artifact, signed by representatives of the crown, stamped with seals that make violence legal as long as you're pointing it at the right targets. You're authorized to attack French ships and pirates, specifically Thomas Tew, John Ireland, Thomas Wake, William Mays, men who've attacked English trade, made themselves rich seizing ships bound for London with spices and silk. You're being sent to stop them, to protect commerce, to bring them to justice, or take their prizes. It sounds righteous. It sounds like you're the hero. The document doesn't mention that piracy is defined by who's angry about it, that this paper is only valuable if powerful men decide to honor it. Recruiting your crew reveals the contradictions. You need 150 men willing to sail to the Indian Ocean with no guaranteed salary, working purely for shares. Honest merchant sailors don't take those terms. The men who show up are former privateers, sailors who've spent careers in the legal grey zone, where violence is justified by paperwork. They're competent, experienced, and morally flexible. They've captured ships under French colours, Spanish colours, whatever commission was convenient. They understand privateering is just piracy with better branding. You tell yourself you need experienced men for a dangerous voyage. You're assembling a crew that knows how to board ships and kill anyone who resists, pretending this is different from a pirate crew because you have official documents. The contract specifies the shares, 10% for you, 90% for investors who will never leave London, never risk disease or drowning or having their throats cut. You'll do all the work, face all the danger, and if you succeed, most of your success enriches men already rich. If you fail, the debt is entirely yours. This is how the system works. Powerful men use less powerful men as instruments, and the instruments bear all the risk. But you signed because refusing would mean admitting you're not the equal partner they're pretending you are, and your pride won't allow that admission. Lord Bellomont meets with you multiple times, reinforcing that you're doing something noble. He talks about protecting English trade, about teaching pirates that the Crown's patience has limits, about how successful privateers receive titles and estates. He never quite says you'll be knighted, but he lets you imagine it, lets you picture returning not as Captain Kidd, but as Sir William. These conversations are calculated. Bellomont understands how to manipulate ambitious men. Offer them a vision slightly better than their current reality, and they'll endure anything to make it real. He's giving you just enough respect to make you loyal, just enough promise to make you reckless, just enough official backing to make you feel protected. The Adventure Galley sails from Plymouth in April 1696, and crowds cheer because privateering is patriotic theatre. You're hunting pirates and Frenchmen, serving the king, protecting commerce. Mothers hold up children to see the ship, merchants toast your voyage, officials make speeches about English courage. You stand on deck watching England recede, feeling the weight of the commission in your coat pocket, believing you're beginning the greatest adventure of your life. You believe competence and courage will be rewarded with wealth and status. Every single belief is catastrophically wrong, but you won't understand that for 2 years, by which time you'll have murdered a crew member, captured ships you shouldn't have touched, and become exactly the criminal you were sent to hunt. The investors watch your ship disappear over the horizon, already calculating. If you succeed, they profit. If you fail, you're ruined, and they've lost a minor investment. If you do something illegal, they can disown you and claim they were deceived. You're not their partner. You're their bet, and like all bets, you're expendable. But you don't know that yet. Right now, you're Captain William Kidd, commander of the Adventure Galley, holder of the King's Commission, sailing toward glory with royal backing. Right now, you still think you're the hero. You're not the hero. You're the scapegoat. They've just sent you to find your own scaffold. The Indian Ocean is trying to kill you, and it's doing an excellent job. It's 1696, barely months into your voyage, and the Adventure Galley is becoming a floating coffin. The heat is oppressive, the kind that makes tar bubble in the seams and turns the gun deck into an oven where men collapse from sheer exhaustion. But heat you can endure. It's the diseases that are destroying your crew. Cholera, dysentery, scurvy, every pestilence that breeds in tropical waters, where men drink from barrels that taste like rot and eat salt pork that's more maggot than meat. 30 men are dead before you've captured a single prize. You bury them at sea, watching bodies wrapped in canvas slip beneath waves, and every burial reduces your crew strength, your fighting capability, your chances of success. The ship itself is dying. Tropical shipworms are eating the adventure galley from the inside, boring through timbers that were solid when you left Plymouth, but are now riddled with holes like diseased bone. The leaks are spreading. You have men pumping constantly, and still the water rises in the hold, mixing with ballast and bilge to create a stinking soup that breeds more disease. The oars that made her special, the advantage that would let you chase down prey in calm waters, are increasingly useless because you don't have enough healthy men to row her. The ship you were so proud of, the weapon that was supposed to make you feared in these waters, is rotting beneath you while you watch helplessly. This is the mathematical reality of tropical voyaging that the investors in London never considered. Ships and men deteriorate faster than they can be replaced. The horizons are empty of prizes. This is what nobody told you. Pirate ships are scarce because successful pirates are smart enough to avoid obvious threats, and merchant ships travel in convoys with naval escorts because the East India Company learned decades ago that unprotected vessels are floating donations to anyone with guns and no morals. You scan every horizon looking for sails, but when you spot ships, they're either too well defended to attack, or they're flying English colours, which makes them untouchable unless you want to become the very criminal you were sent to hunt. The Indian Ocean is vast, and you're looking for needles in a haystack while your crew starves and your ship disintegrates, and the debt you owe grows heavier with every empty day. Your crew's anger is palpable. These aren't merchant sailors who signed on for wages. These are privateers who expected plunder, and no plunder means no payment. They're watching their shipmates die of disease while you sail past potential prizes because you're trying to follow the rules, trying to honour your commission, trying to be the respectable privateer the noblemen in London imagined. But your crew doesn't care about respectability. They care about survival and wealth in that order, and you're currently providing neither. The whispers start. Mutinous suggestions that maybe you're too cautious, too concerned with legality, too soft to do what's necessary. If he won't take prizes, we'll find a captain who will. You hear it in their silences, see it in the way they watch you, feel it in the air like a storm building. The debt is crushing you. You spent everything outfitting this voyage, borrowed against your property in New York, against your future, against the promise that prizes would cover costs and generate profit. But there are no prizes. The investors expected returns. They financed a hunting expedition, not a sightseeing cruise through disease-infested waters. Every week that passes without capturing something valuable makes your financial situation more desperate. You're not just failing to get rich, you're actively being destroyed, day by day, by expenses and death and the slow realization that this commission might bankrupt you, even if you survive it. The impossible mathematics of privateering become clear. You need prizes to pay your debts, but taking prizes requires healthy men and a seaworthy ship, both of which require money you don't have. The legal ambiguity starts gnawing at you. Your letter of marque allows French ships, but what defines a French ship? French ownership? French cargo? French passes? If an Armenian ship is carrying French goods under French passes, is that legal prey? The document in your cabin doesn't answer these questions because legal language requires lawyers and courts, and you're alone in the Indian Ocean making decisions that could mean legitimacy or execution, depending on interpretations you won't hear until it's too late. The pressure is building. Return empty-handed and face financial ruin, watching your family lose everything you've built, or cross the line, take questionable prizes, hope the paperwork protects you. Every day the choice becomes less theoretical and more desperate. Then William Moore questions your leadership, and you kill him. It happens fast. Your gunner, drunk and angry, publicly challenges your decisions, calls you a coward for not attacking a Moorish ship you deemed too dangerous. You're tired, desperate, furious at the unfairness of everything, and you grab a wooden bucket bound with iron hoops and you strike him. Once. The crack of his skull is audible across the deck. He falls, bleeding from the head, and dies the next day from the wound. You've murdered a member of your crew in a rage, and there's no taking it back, no legal justification, no paperwork that makes this legitimate. In one moment of exhausted fury, you've committed an act that will follow you to the gallows. Your crew watches in silence, and you see the calculation in their eyes. The captain just killed a man for questioning him, which means either he's more dangerous than they thought, or he's lost control completely. The line you've been trying not to cross is behind you now. You killed William Moore, and that murder makes everything that follows inevitable. January 30th, 1698. You've been hunting for 18 months, and finally there's a sail on the horizon that looks like salvation. The Quedar Merchant, a 400-ton Armenian merchant vessel riding low in the water, heavy with cargo, moving slowly like a fat merchant should. She's everything you've been praying for, valuable, vulnerable, and flying French passes. Those passes are critical. They mean this capture is legal under your commission. They mean you can finally return to London with a prize that justifies this nightmare voyage, that pays your debts, that proves you were the right man for this job. You chase her down, the adventure galley closing distance despite her deteriorating condition, and your crew is electric with anticipation. This is what they signed on for. This is what 18 months of death and disease and empty horizons have been building toward. The attack is almost disappointingly easy. The Quedar Merchant's captain sees your guns, sees your crew ready to board, and surrenders without a fight. No broadside exchange, no desperate boarding action, no heroic resistance. Just a merchant captain making the sensible calculation that cargo isn't worth dying for, that insurance will cover losses, that survival beats principle. Your men swarm aboard, and what they find makes them roar with triumph. Silk, gold, silver, opium, jewels. The cargo hold is packed with luxury goods bound for the markets of Europe and Asia, the kind of wealth that makes men's hands shake when they touch it. Initial estimates put the value at $70,000, more money than most of your crew will see in 10 lifetimes, more than enough to cover your debts and make every investor in London smile. For the first time in 18 months, you feel like you made the right choice accepting this commission. The crew celebrates like they've won a war. Shares are distributed according to the articles you signed before sailing, predetermined percentages based on rank and role, the standard privateer arrangement that keeps men from murdering each other over division of spoils. Your 10% is a fortune. Your men's shares are life-changing amounts. After months of watching shipmates die with nothing to show for it, after all the disease and hunger and failed chases, you've finally captured something that matters. The mood aboard the adventure galley transforms. The mutinous whispers stop. The questioning looks disappear. You're the captain who delivered, who proved that patience and persistence pay off, who made them all rich. For a few glorious days, this feels like vindication. Then you examine the papers more carefully, and the celebration curdles into dread. Yes, the Quedar Merchant has French passes, 2 of them issued by the French East India Company, giving her permission to trade in French-controlled waters. Technically, legally, under the strict letter of your commission, those passes make her legitimate prey. But the cargo doesn't belong to French merchants. The cargo belongs to a powerful Mughal official, and the ship was chartered by the East India Company, the English East India Company, the most powerful trading entity in the Indian Ocean, the company that has the ear of Parliament and the Crown and every investor who matters in London. You've just captured a ship with French papers carrying English commercial interests and Mughal wealth. You've created a diplomatic incident wrapped in a legal technicality. The political calculation you missed is suddenly, horrifyingly obvious. The English East India Company is trying to maintain trading privileges with the Mughal Empire, which controls most of the Indian subcontinent and represents the most lucrative market in Asia. The Mughals are not amused when English privateers, even legally commissioned ones, seize ships carrying goods belonging to Mughal officials. It doesn't matter that you have French passes proving this was technically legal. It doesn't matter that your commission authorized exactly this kind of capture. What matters is that you've embarrassed the East India Company, threatened their relationship with the Mughal emperor, and created a problem that will require diplomatic cleanup in multiple capitals. You thought you were capturing a French prize. You actually captured a political nightmare that will make powerful people very, very angry. You rename the ship the Adventure Prize, trying to erase the evidence, trying to make this look like any other legitimate privateering capture. You transfer the most valuable cargo to your own ships, distribute shares to your crew, and prepare to sail for home with your fortune secured. Your men don't care about diplomatic complications. They have silk and gold and opium to sell, enough wealth to buy land and legitimacy and futures their fathers never imagined. But you're starting to understand that legal and politically acceptable are not the same thing, that having the right paperwork doesn't protect you if you've angered the wrong people, that your commission is only valuable if the men who issued it decide to honor it, and you're beginning to suspect they won't. News travels faster than ships. Long before you can reach London or New York, reports of your capture spread across the Indian Ocean, carried by faster vessels, by merchants with connections, by officials writing urgent letters to their superiors. The East India Company hears that Captain Kidd has seized a ship carrying Mughal goods. The Mughal emperor hears that English privateers are attacking vessels under his protection. Parliament hears that Kidd is creating diplomatic disasters. And in London, your investors hear that their privateer has captured something politically radioactive, and they start calculating whether it's better to support you or sacrifice you. You don't know any of this yet. You're sailing toward the Caribbean with your holds full of treasure, believing you've finally succeeded, finally proven yourself worthy of the trust placed in you. You've actually just signed your own death warrant. The only question now is how long until someone serves it. You're sailing toward the Caribbean in 1699, imagining your triumphant return, your share of the Quedar merchant's treasure secured, your debts paid, your reputation as a successful privateer established. You picture the greeting you'll receive in New York. Sarah relieved, your children proud, merchants eager to invest in your next venture, Lord Bellomont pleased with your success. You've spent 2 brutal years in the Indian Ocean, lost half your crew to disease, killed a mutinous gunner, and finally captured a prize that justifies everything. The worst is behind you. That's what you tell yourself as the Adventure Prize pushes through Atlantic swells toward home. You're catastrophically wrong. The first hint comes from passing ships, garbled reports, strange warnings, captains who won't quite meet your eyes when they mention your name. Rumors reach you in fragments, stories about piracy charges, about angry Mughal officials, about English authorities looking for Captain Kidd. You dismiss it as confusion, the usual exaggeration that follows any successful privateering voyage. Jealous merchants spreading lies, competitors trying to undermine your success, the typical colonial gossip that accompanies anyone who returns with wealth. You have your commission. You have the French passes from the Quedar merchant proving this was a legal capture. You have investors who include the King of England himself. What could possibly go wrong when you have that kind of backing? Everything. Absolutely everything. Caribbean ports turn hostile before you understand why. Governors who should welcome an English privateer instead refuse you entry. Harbour masters who should process your cargo instead send warning shots across your bow. Colonial officials whisper urgently and point at your ship like you're carrying plague. You try to dock in Antigua and are turned away. You approach Nevis and receive the same treatment. Something has changed in the months you've been at sea. Some shift in political winds you can't see, but can definitely feel. The treasure in your hold, which felt like salvation, is starting to feel like evidence. The French passes that proved your legality are starting to feel like insufficient defense against accusations you haven't even heard yet. Then comes the coded message from Lord Bellomont. Come to Boston. You'll receive the King's mercy. It arrives through intermediaries, carefully worded to sound like reassurance, while actually being a trap baited with hope. Bellomont is now governor of Massachusetts, positioned perfectly to offer you safe harbor, and his message implies that all the rumors and hostility are misunderstandings that can be cleared up through direct conversation. Come to Boston, explain your actions, present your evidence, receive the royal pardon that's waiting for you. The message is a masterpiece of manipulation, offering exactly what a desperate man wants to hear while committing to absolutely nothing. But you're desperate enough to believe it because the alternative is admitting your investors have abandoned you. You're not completely stupid. You sense the danger even through your desperation. Before sailing to Boston, you stop at Gardiner's Island off Long Island and bury some of the treasure, gold, jewels, the most portable wealth from the Quedar merchant. It's insurance, a hedge against the possibility that things in Boston won't go as smoothly as Bellomont promises. You tell yourself you're being cautious, not paranoid. You tell yourself this is just smart planning, not preparation for betrayal. But the act of burying treasure, of hiding wealth you legally captured under your commission, reveals what you're actually thinking. That legitimacy is no longer protecting you. That paperwork means nothing if powerful people decide to ignore it. That you might need to run. July 1699. Boston. You're arrested the moment you step ashore. Lord Bellomont greets you with constables and chains. His promised mercy revealed as a lie so blatant, it would be funny if it wasn't destroying your life. Everything you thought was true. Your commission, your investors' support, your legal protection, evaporates in an instant. Bellomont claims he was deceived by you, that you exceeded your authority, that the Quedar merchant capture was piracy despite the French passes. He says this publicly, loudly, making sure everyone hears that he's the victim here, not you. The investors who financed your voyage are issuing similar statements in London. They trusted you. You betrayed them. They're shocked and appalled by your criminal actions. Even King William is distancing himself, claiming through spokesmen that he had no knowledge of your activities. The evidence that would save you mysteriously disappears. The French passes from the Quedar merchant, the documents proving your capture was legal under your commission, vanish from official custody. You ask for them repeatedly, demand they be presented at any inquiry, insist they're critical to your defense. Nobody can find them. They've been misplaced, or lost in transit, or filed incorrectly. The most important pieces of paper in your life, the difference between legitimacy and piracy, are simply gone. Without them, your capture of the Quedar merchant looks like naked aggression rather than lawful privateering. Without them, you look like a pirate who killed his crew and attacked innocent merchants. Without them, you're exactly what your investors need you to be, a criminal they can blame. You write letters from your Boston prison cell begging for help. Letters to your investors explaining what happened, reminding them they financed this voyage, pleading for them to honor their partnership. Letters to Bellomont asking why he lied, demanding the protection he promised. Letters to anyone with power or influence who might remember that you were following orders, that you had a commission, that this was their plan before it became politically inconvenient. Every letter goes unanswered. Every plea is ignored. The silence is its own message. You're expendable, and they've already decided to expend you. Locked in chains in a Boston prison, you finally understand the game. You were never their partner. You were their insurance policy, and now you're being cashed in. They needed someone to hunt pirates and take French ships, someone with just enough legitimacy to make it look official, but not enough power to refuse when things went wrong. They needed a scapegoat who could be blamed if the venture failed, or if diplomatic complications arose. They needed exactly what you are. A colonial merchant captain, ambitious enough to accept impossible terms, skilled enough to actually capture prizes, and expendable enough to sacrifice when protecting him became inconvenient. The commission was never protection. It was always a leash. Your fate was decided before you ever left London. You just didn't know it until the trap closed. They drag you from Boston to London in chains, and the journey takes months because you're cargo now, not a person. Dangerous cargo that needs to be kept secure, but doesn't need to be kept comfortable. The Atlantic crossing is brutal, chained below decks where you can hear waves slamming against the hull, and wonder if drowning might be preferable to what's waiting in England. You arrive in London in April 1700, and they throw you into Newgate Prison, which is less a building than a demonstration of how thoroughly society can abandon human dignity. The stench hits you first. Human waste, rot, decay, the accumulated misery of centuries of prisoners dying in darkness. You'll wait here for a year before trial, rotting in filth while propaganda destroys whatever reputation you had left. Newgate is where hope goes to die. The cells are packed with men awaiting execution, men who've already been executed by disease before the hangman could get them, men who've lost their minds in the darkness and scream at demons only they can see. You have money, some of it at least, what wasn't seized when you were arrested, so you can pay for better accommodations, which means a cell that's merely horrible instead of actively fatal. You can buy food that's only partly spoiled, candles that provide a few hours of light, information about what's happening in the world outside. What you learn is that you've already been convicted in the court of public opinion, that newspapers are running stories about the pirate kid who betrayed the king's trust, that your trial will be a formality to confirm what everyone already knows. May 8th, 1701. The trial begins at the Old Bailey, and the courtroom is packed with spectators who came for entertainment, not justice. This is theatre, a public performance designed to satisfy the East India Company's anger, to reassure the Mughal Empire that England punishes pirates, and to protect the investors who financed your voyage and now pretend they were your victims. You stand accused of piracy and the murder of William Moore, and the verdict is predetermined before a single witness testifies. The prosecution has everything. Mutinous crew members given immunity to testify against you. Merchants from the Quedar Merchant claiming they were victims of unprovoked attack. Officials explaining how your actions damaged English diplomatic interests. What you don't have is any meaningful defense. The French passes that would prove the Quedar Merchant was legal prey are still mysteriously missing. You request them. The court acknowledges they should exist. Nobody can produce them. Without those documents, your capture of the ship looks like simple piracy. You attacked a vessel, stole its cargo, and claimed it was legal after the fact. The prosecution argues you exceeded your commission, that you turned pirate when prizes were scarce, that you captured ships you had no authority to take. You try to explain the passes existed, that you followed. Your commission, precisely, that Lord Bellomont and the other investors knew exactly what you were doing. The court is not interested in your explanations. The court is interested in conviction. Your sponsors have disappeared. Lord Bellomont died in 1701, conveniently avoiding the awkwardness of testifying about what he knew and when he knew it. The Earl of Orford is silent. The Duke of Shrewsbury has no comment. None of the investors who financed your voyage appear in court to acknowledge their involvement or explain the terms of your commission. The prosecution presents you as a rogue privateer who deceived noble patrons, and those noble patrons don't contradict that narrative because contradicting it would mean admitting they invested in a venture that attacked English commercial interests. They've chosen their reputations over your life, and that choice is completely rational from their perspective. You're one man. They're the foundation of English power. The math is simple. The crew testimony destroys you. Former members of your crew, given immunity in exchange for cooperation, describe your voyage in terms carefully crafted to emphasize criminality. They talk about how you attacked ships without proper authority, how you murdered William Moore in cold blood, how you divided plunder like a pirate captain rather than a legitimate privateer. Some of them are telling the truth. You did kill Moore with a bucket. You did capture the Quedar Merchant. You did distribute shares. But they're describing these actions in the worst possible light, removing context and justification, making you sound like a criminal rather than a desperate captain trying to salvage an impossible situation. They're saving themselves by condemning you, and you can't even blame them because you'd probably do the same. The murder charge is the easiest to prove because it's undeniable. You killed William Moore by striking him with an iron-bound bucket during a confrontation in October 1697. You've never denied this. Your defense is that Moore was mutinous, that he publicly challenged your authority, that discipline aboard ship requires captains to maintain control through force when necessary. The prosecution's version is simpler. You murdered a crew member in a rage, which makes you a killer regardless of what paperwork you carry. The jury doesn't need to understand the complexities of maritime law or privateering commissions to understand that you bashed a man's skull in and he died from the wound. That's murder. That's a hanging offence. Everything else is just additional evidence of your criminal character. The verdict arrives on May 9, 1701, after less than a day of deliberation. Guilty on all counts: piracy, murder, crimes against the Mughal Empire, violations of your commission. The judge sentences you to death by hanging at Execution Dock, the traditional site for pirates whose crimes offend maritime law. You'll hang where the Thames meets the sea, where every sailor entering or leaving London can see what happens to men who attack ships without proper authority. You stand in the dock listening to the sentence, and you finally understand with perfect clarity that this was never about justice. This was about satisfying angry merchants, protecting diplomatic relationships, and making sure that when noblemen gamble on privateering ventures that go wrong, someone pays the price. And that someone is always the expendable captain, never the investors. The trial proved what you'd already learned in Boston. Legitimacy is a weapon, the powerful use against the powerless, and you stopped being powerful the moment you became inconvenient. May 23, 1701. They come for you at dawn, loading you into a cart for the procession through London streets to Wapping, to Execution Dock, to the place where pirates die in sight of the ships they once commanded. The crowd follows like you're a parade, jeering and throwing refuse, treating your death as entertainment because public executions are the best free show in London. Some of them think you're a monster who betrayed the king. Some think you're a romantic pirate who lived free and died defiant. None of them know the truth, that you're a merchant captain who took a job offer from the wrong people and paid for their political miscalculation with your life. The cart rolls through narrow streets slick with horse shit and human waste, past shops and taverns where people stop their morning business to watch you pass, and you smell the Thames before you see it, that distinctive mix of salt water and sewage that means you're close to the end. Execution Dock sits where the river meets the sea, built specifically for maritime criminals whose offences require special punishment. The gallows stands at the low water mark, so the tide will wash over your corpse, so every sailor entering or leaving London will see what happens to men who attack ships without proper authority. The symbolism is deliberate. You live by the sea, you'll die by the sea, and the sea will claim your body as a warning to anyone else considering piracy. The Admiralty Marshal is waiting, carrying the silver oar that represents the Crown's maritime law, the symbol of authority that condemns you. A massive crowd has gathered, thousands of Londoners who woke early to watch a pirate hang, who brought their children and their breakfasts, who will remember this as the day they saw Captain Kidd swing. Your final words are recorded by multiple witnesses, though they'll argue forever about exactly what you said. Some claim you were defiant, cursing the investors who abandoned you and proclaiming your innocence. Others say you were repentant, asking God's forgiveness and warning sailors against the sin of piracy. The truth is probably somewhere between, a desperate man trying to maintain dignity while acknowledging the crimes that brought him here, knowing that history will judge these words but unable to predict how. You might mention Sarah and your children. You might curse Lord Bellomont's name. You might simply say you were following orders from men who should have protected you. Whatever you say, it won't change what happens next. The first drop doesn't kill you. The rope breaks, either from poor quality or deliberate sabotage or simple bad luck, and you fall into the Thames mud, gasping and choking, humiliated even in death. The crowd roars with laughter and horror. The executioner's assistants drag you out of the muck, your clothes soaked with river filth, your neck bruised but not broken, and they have to hang you again because the law requires completion. Some witnesses will later claim this was divine intervention, God giving you a chance to repent. Others will say it was just incompetence, typical government work, the same bureaucratic failure that defined your entire relationship with English authority. They fit you with a new rope, stronger this time, and when they drop you the second time it holds. Your body jerks and spasms as you strangle, not the quick neck-breaking death of a proper hanging, but the slow suffocation of a botched execution, and it takes minutes for you to die, while thousands watch. The tradition for pirates requires your body to hang through 3 tides, left dangling from the gallows while the Thames rises and falls, water lapping at your feet, and then your waist, and then your chest. The sea claiming you in stages. This is how maritime law declares dominion over criminals who offended on water. After the tides have marked you, they cut you down and coat your corpse in tar, preserving the flesh long enough for the next phase of your punishment. They seal you in an iron cage, a gibbet custom built for your dimensions, and hang you at Tilbury Point, where the Thames opens to the sea. Every ship entering London will sail past your caged body, will see the rotting corpse swaying in the wind, will know that this is what happens to pirates. The gibbet is a warning made of iron and decaying meat. You hang at Tilbury Point for years. Your flesh rots, blackens, falls away in chunks that drop into the water below. Birds pick at what remains, building nests in your ribcage, feeding on the last remnants of Captain William Kidd. Sailors passing beneath hold their noses and tell stories, some true, some invented, about the pirate who betrayed the king and died cursing his fate. Children dare each other to throw rocks at your cage. Artists sketch your corpse for newspapers and broadsheets. You become legend and warning simultaneously, your actual story buried beneath layers of propaganda and moral lessons about the wages of piracy. The man who took a nobleman's commission and followed orders as best he understood them becomes the pirate who deserved everything he got. The treasure you buried on Gardiner's Island is recovered shortly after your execution, turned over to authorities, divided among the investors who condemned you. There are rumors of other buried caches, of wealth you hid in the Caribbean or Madagascar, of gold that's still waiting to be discovered. Treasure hunters will search for centuries, convinced that somewhere Captain Kidd's fortune lies hidden. They'll never find it because it doesn't exist. You spent or distributed most of what you captured, and what remained was seized when you were arrested. But the legend of hidden treasure persists because people need to believe there's more to your story than a merchant captain destroyed by political convenience. Lord Bellomont is dead before you hang, dying of illness in 1701 without ever facing consequences for his betrayal. The Earl of Orford retains his position and his wealth. The Duke of Shrewsbury continues his political career unblemished. King William dies in 1702, having successfully distanced himself from the privateering venture that went wrong. Every investor who financed your voyage keeps their money and their reputation, their involvement conveniently forgotten, their names removed from documents that might prove they knew exactly what you were doing and approved it. They risked money. You risked everything. They lost nothing. You lost your life. This is how the system was designed to work. Your bones rattle in the Thames wind for years until there's nothing left but iron cage and fragments of tar-coated bone. And even those eventually disappear, tossed into the river, or sold as souvenirs to tourists who want a piece of pirate history. Your name becomes a curse, a warning, proof that piracy doesn't pay and that betraying the king means death. The actual truth, that you were hired by noblemen to commit state-sanctioned violence, then sacrificed when that violence became politically embarrassing, is buried beneath propaganda so effective it lasts for centuries. You died for political convenience, your trial a performance, your life exchanged to appease the East India Company and protect investors who played privateer with other people's necks. And as your bones disappear into the Thames, sailors pass and whisper your name, understanding what history will take centuries to admit, that the difference between hero and pirate was never about what you did, but about who betrayed you first.